Welcome to Shadows at Dusk. Dusk is not the end. It's the doorway between two worlds. A place where stories slip through, quiet, cold, and true. You've entered that space now, and what follows is meant for you. Stay in the shadow. The memory clings, sharp as frost, the first time my name, Elias, slithered down that shadowed artery of the building. I was folded over actuarial tables in my sterile box of an office, the old structure groaning around me like a settling beast. 9 o'clock, perhaps later. The diurnal hum of colleagues had long since faded, leaving only the stuttering pulse of fluorescent tubes overhead, painting the silence in nervous light. Then Elias, a sibilant whisper, scraped and tinny, as if breathed through corroded metal, seeming to emanate from just beyond my door frame. Every sinew in my body went taut. A strange, galvanic energy surged through my ribs. Levering myself up, I moved to the threshold. The corridor stretched away, a chiaroscuro landscape sculpted by the energy-saving measures that extinguished alternate lights after hours. Corners pooled with impenetrable black. I craned my neck, listening. Emptiness answered. Fatigue, I reasoned. The late hour, the screen's insistent glow, tattooing phantoms onto my retina. Retreating, I sank back into my chair, but the reprieve was fleeting. Minutes later, louder now. Elias, broken, fractured like a recording played on a warped machine. Again I rose, and stepping fully into the hallway's gloom. The sound seemed to coil at the far end, near the elevator nexus. My heart hammered a frantic rhythm against my sternum. A film of perspiration slicked my back. Slowly, I advanced, my gaze sweeping the linoleum, the featureless walls, the closed office doors. Mundane, all of it, save for the uneven spectral illumination. Reaching the corridor's terminus, my eyes snagged on something incongruous. A door, set into the left wall, adjacent to the final office suite, utterly plain, unadorned metal, devoid of signage or number. I felt a distinct current of cooler air wafting from it. My mind, a repository of blueprints and structural minutiae, an architect's obsession lingering in an actuary's brain, protested. I knew this hallway intimately. That wall marked the building's outer skin. There was no space behind it. Yet here stood this portal, a knot formed in my gut, my throat constricted, parched. My fingers brushed the handle, expecting resistance, the denial of a lock. It yielded with unnerving ease, hinges sighing softly. Pushing it inward, a mere handbreadth unleashed a palpable rush of frigid air against my face. Beyond the threshold lay absolute nullity. No shapes, no boundaries, just a profound darkness that seemed to swallow the meager light spilling from the corridor. It felt impossibly vast, like peering into a cavernous hangar, yet logic dictated there was nothing there but a sheer drop to the street below. The air hung thick, stagnant, smelling faintly of dust and disuse. Hesitation held me captive on the threshold. A primal chill, like skeletal fingers, traced my spine. One part of me screamed to slam the door, bolt for the elevators, flee into the night. But a deeper, more insidious curiosity anchored me. One tentative step inward. The floor felt unexpectedly solid beneath my shoe, yet the blackness was almost tactile. The corridor light penetrated only a few feet, revealing nothing. The temperature plummeted further. A peculiar pressure clamped down on my eardrums, the sensation of a hermetically sealed chamber. My pulse galloped. Another step. Elias. The voice directly behind me now, though the air remained undisturbed by any presence. My legs trembled, a sudden, desperate urge to retreat overwhelming me. I stumbled backward, hands still gripping the knob, until I stood again in the relative safety of the hallway. I wrenched the door shut, the click of the latch unnaturally loud. Then I turned and fled, grabbing my belongings from the office, locking the door with fumbling hands, escaping the building's oppressive silence as if pursued. Sleep offered little sanctuary that night, my mind replaying the metallic rasp, the caress of unnatural cold. The following day, work was a fractured narrative, punctuated by intrusive thoughts of the impossible door. At noon, amidst the bustling lunchtime crowd, I walked the length of the corridor. The wall near the elevators was seamless, uninterrupted white plaster meeting gray baseboard, exactly as it should be. I lingered, scrutinizing the spot before turning away, a seed of resolve taking root. I would stay late again. Feigning diligence on a major project, I deflected my colleagues' jibes about workaholism, my stomach tightening with a mixture of dread and anticipation as dusk bled into evening. By 7, the floor had thinned. By 8, only the spectral presence of the cleaning crew remained. By 9, they too had vanished, and the corridor lights began their staggered descent into dimness. I sat sentinel in my illuminated office, straining against the building's profound quiet. Around 9:30, it came, Elias, that same grating intonation. My scalp prickled. Shoving my chair back, I rose and walked into the corridor, now a space transformed by shadow, my gaze fixed on the far end. It was there, the featureless metal slab, resurrected. My heart thumped a heavy cadence. My palms grew slick. Each footfall felt ponderous as I approached. Reaching out, my fingers met the chill metal of the handle. A faint, almost imperceptible vibration hummed through it, a thrumming energy that defied explanation. I opened it. The cold exhalation, the waiting void, identical to the night before. This time I was prepared, a heavy-duty flashlight clutched in my hand. Its beam sliced into the black, illuminating a narrow swathe of smooth, bare concrete floor. Stepping inside, I swept the light in wide arcs, searching for walls, for limits. The space felt vaster than the entire building floor plate. A few paces in, the air grew denser, heavier. My breathing became shallow, a tightness constricting my chest. Behind me, the soft click of the door closing echoed. Startled, I spun, the flashlight beam finding the faint outline of the door, now shut. Panic flared. I rushed back, twisted the knob. It opened readily. Relief washed through me in a dizzying wave. I wasn't entombed. Glancing back into the profound darkness, my name reverberated once more, Elias seemingly closer this time. My heart performed a frantic flutter. I was utterly adrift. An experiment formed. I stepped out, closed the door firmly, and retreated to my office. A few minutes passed in strained silence. Returning to the corridor confirmed it. The door remained. I repeated the cycle several times. Open, probe the void with light, hear the disembodied rasp from its depths. Retreat, close. The voice never manifested unless I was physically inside that impossible space. Each utterance tightened my throat, spiked my pulse. My grip on rationality felt tenuous. Could it be an elaborate hoax? A hidden speaker? Someone exploiting the building's acoustics? But the space itself, it simply could not exist. 7th floor, exterior wall. Nothingness should lie beyond, yet I stepped into what felt like an immense, freezing warehouse. The sheer physical impossibility gnawed at me. Over subsequent nights, the door became a dark magnet pulling me toward it. I needed to understand. I tried marking the wall during daylight hours. The mark vanished with the wall's integrity. Come nightfall, the door reappeared, precise, unwavering. I attempted to wedge it open, but each time I returned after a brief interval, it stood closed, the wedge lying inert on the corridor floor. I never witnessed the act of closing. It simply was shut when unobserved. One evening, I positioned my phone on a small tripod across the hall, recording video, aimed squarely at the anomalous section of wall. Hiding in my darkened office, I waited. 9:30 arrived, and with it, the familiar chillin' summons, Elias. I hurried out, retrieved the phone. The corridor was dim, the door solidly present. Stopping the recording, I played it back. The footage showed the empty, still hallway. Then, precisely at the time I'd heard the voice, the image dissolved into static for a single frame. When clarity returned, the door was simply there. No transition, no fading in, no construction. Blank wall one moment, solid metal door the next. Watching it, my hands began to shake uncontrollably, my breath coming in ragged gasps. This wasn't hallucination. It was real. Disturbingly real. The next logical step, however terrifying, was to document the interior. That night, camera rolling, flashlight cutting a path, I stepped across the threshold again. The air felt viscous, oppressively heavy. My temples pulsed with a dull ache. Elias. It echoed from deeper within, the sound elongated, distorted, as if stretched across a vast distance. I advanced, keeping the light and camera trained ahead. Nothing visible, only the chilling emptiness, but now accompanied by faint, dry scraping sounds, like heavy objects being dragged across concrete, far away. My own breath plumed visibly in the flashlight's beam. The cold was intense, seeping into my bones. My feet grew numb, my fingers stiff around the flashlight's casing. I walked perhaps 50 paces, enveloped in darkness but for that solitary beam. The further I ventured, the more pronounced a sensation of weight became, pressing down on my shoulders. Then, abruptly, my nerves shattered. Visceral dread coiled in my stomach, every instinct screaming retreat. I turned. For a heart-stopping second, the doorway wasn't there, just unending black. Panic surged, then a faint glimmer, a sliver of light. I hurried towards it. As I neared, the distinct slam of the door reverberated through the space. But I reached it, wrenched the handle, it opened. I stumbled back into the hallway, gasping, drenched in cold sweat. Reviewing the footage later yielded little, a shaky perspective of barren concrete. The microphone captured the scraping, a low, sibilant hiss like wind in a tunnel, but offered no source. The space appeared utterly vacant. The recorded voice was faint, warped, almost subliminal, lacking the chilling immediacy I experienced firsthand. No figures, no movement, just darkness and disquieting sound. Sleep became a luxury I could no longer afford. My appetite vanished. Daylight hours were spent in a state of low-grade anxiety, watching the clock, anticipating the night. The compulsion to return warred with stark terror. It was an unbearable psychic itch. Subtle changes began to bleed into the mundane. The corridor near that specific spot felt perceptibly colder, even at midday. I casually asked a colleague, Maya, if she felt a draft, a shrug, a negative. Touching the wall where the door manifested revealed a surface cool to the touch, like the exterior of a refrigeration unit. I started a log, appearance consistently between 9 and 10 p.m., presence maintained until my departure. It vanished, I suspected, the moment I left the building. I tried hiding in a nearby supply closet once, determined to see if it persisted past midnight. By 11, exhaustion and raw fear won out. Emerging, the door was still there. I lacked the fortitude to wait longer. I fled. One night, I resolved to break the cycle. Enough. I wouldn't open it, wouldn't even approach. I forced my focus onto spreadsheets, the rhythmic clicking of keys a frail defense against the building's encroaching silence. 9:15, Elias, that metallic rasp. My knuckles whitened as I gripped the desk edge. Ignore it. Again, it called, and again. I could feel my pulse throbbing in my throat, sweat beaded on my forehead. Squeezing my eyes shut, I tried to anchor myself to the drone of the HVAC system. The voice sounded closer now, palpably closer. A breath of icy air feathered the back of my neck. Every hair on my arms stood erect. A minute of this intense proximity, then silence. I exhaled, tension easing fractionally from my shoulders. Then, insidious curiosity slithered back. It had never sounded so near before, as if standing right at my office threshold. I stood, legs unsteady. Stepping out, I found the corridor steeped in its usual nocturnal gloom. In the door, it was there, but this time, slightly ajar. A thin ribbon of cold air curled out into the hallway. I moved forward, so I hesitated, and then approached with leaden steps. The hinges groaned as I pushed it wider. I hadn't brought my flashlight tonight. The weak overheads cast feeble light, penetrating only a few feet into the Stygian interior. A wave of profound dread washed over me, a somatic warning. Elias. It echoed from within, but altered, layered, as if two voices spoke in dissonant unison. Adrenaline surged, fierce and cold. My hands trembled violently. My breathing grew rapid and shallow. The air inside felt impossibly dense, suffocating. I took one step back, then another. With trembling fingers, I pulled the door closed, turned, walked directly to the elevators, and didn't look back. I haven't opened that door since, but its presence lingers. Every night I remain past 9, it materializes. Sometimes, a flicker of its reflection catches my eye in the polished hallway floor, viewed from my office window. Sometimes, the voice still whispers at the periphery of my hearing, Elias, almost lost in the building's ambient sighs. Sometimes, that glacial touch brushes my shoulder, and I spin, heart leaping, to find only empty air. I leave earlier now, religiously. My manager's displeasure regarding my reduced availability is a small price to pay. Avoidance is my strategy. I carry work home. I shun that end of the corridor after twilight descends. If passage is unavoidable, my head stays down, my pace brisk. Descending in the elevator, I sometimes fancy I feel a draft curling around my collar, a phantom breath pursuing me. I dismiss it. How long can this equilibrium hold? Thoughts of transfer, of seeking employment elsewhere, flicker, but economic realities tether me. For now, punctuality is my shield. Yet each evening, as I gather my things, the familiar tension returns, a cold knot tightening in my chest. My hands feel unsteady on my briefcase handle. Is it waiting? Often, the corridor is blessedly empty as I make my exit, yet the air near that specific wall feels thinner, colder, a quiescent presence. There's no neat conclusion here, no revelation. The phenomenon persists, the door returns, the voice calls, my avoidance continues. I will not enter that space again. It feels alien, intrusive, a pocket of wrongness stitched into the fabric of the mundane, cold, vacant, and predatory. The mere thought of crossing that threshold sends shivers of pure terror down my spine. So I adhere to my ritual, log off early, retrieve my keys, affect normalcy, ride the elevator, nod to the night guard, step out into the city's embrace. The relative warmth of the open air temporarily loosens the icy grip around my shoulders. It infiltrates my dreams, of course, the plain metal door perpetually slightly open, framing that impenetrable darkness. I awaken suddenly, heart pounding a frantic tattoo against my ribs, staring wildly at the familiar shadows of my apartment. 3 a.m., safe. Then the crushing realization tomorrow necessitates return to the same corridors, the same offices, the same stretch of blank wall that might not remain blank after the sun sets. This is my reality now, an ongoing haunting. I possess no answers, only the chilling certainty that some nights a voice like broken metal whispers my name, and down the hall an impossible door stands sentinel, and beyond it, within that glacial, suffocating void, something waits. If you find yourself alone in the quiet hum of a deserted building after dark, and a voice you don't recognize calls your name from just out of sight, do yourself a kindness, lock up, go home, convince yourself it was the wind, because some doors, once opened, redefine the boundaries of your world forever. First light bled across the serrated peaks, painting long skeletal shadows over what remained of our camp. As the nascent sun illuminated shredded canvas, whispering in the breeze, and gear strewn like refuse, the night's brutal visitation became starkly apparent. Yet it wasn't the mere destruction chilling the marrow in my bones. It was the colossal, unclassifiable footprints pressed deep into the earth, leading away into the pines. Something had been here, something vast and unknown, and its path was now ours to tread. My name is Elias Thorne. What began as a necessary escape, a weekend's respite with my oldest friend, Julian, had warped into a descent directly from nightmare's deepest well. Months we'd plotted this exodus from the suffocating rhythm of ledgers and deadlines, yearning for the untamed solace of the serrated peaks wilderness. We considered ourselves seasoned woodsmen, yet no accumulated experience could have possibly girded us for the presence we encountered in that remote, high-altitude desolation. We'd shouldered our burdens at the trailhead Friday afternoon, provisions ample for 3 days stitched into our packs. The ascent was arduous, lungs burning, muscles protesting, but the raw beauty, the sheer scale of the landscape offered its own intoxicating reward. By the time we reached our designated haven, a modest clearing beside a stream that chattered over smooth stones, fatigue warred pleasantly with exhilaration. Gods, Elias, I needed this. Julian sighed, wrestling with a tent pole. No demands, no screens, just this. He gestured expansively at the towering conifers and the vast, indifferent sky. I nodded, drawing the crisp, pine-sharp air deep into my lungs. Perfection. Let's conjure a fire, liberate those ales we hauled all this way. The evening unfolded in tranquil harmony. We charred sausages over dancing flames, swapped anecdotes worn smooth by retelling, and watched the cosmos ignite, a dense diamond scatter across the velvet black. It felt consecrated, that solitude, as if we were the sole inheritors of the world. Later, cocooned in our sleeping bags, the forest murmured its nocturnal symphony, an owl's questioning call, the furtive rustle of unseen life in the undergrowth. It was a lullaby of the wild, and I surrendered to sleep, feeling a peace that had eluded me for months. What pierced that peace remains uncertain. Perhaps an abrupt cessation of sound, the forest holding its breath, or maybe some vestigial instinct, an ancient alarm tripped by proximity to a predator of unnatural scale. Regardless, I found myself starkly awake, adrift in the impenetrable blackness within the tent. Julian, I breathed, my hand finding his shoulder. Julian, wake up. He surfaced from sleep with a low groan. What time is it? Shh, I hissed, urgency tightening my throat. Listen. Silence descended again, absolute save for the frantic hammering in my own chest. We strained, ears reaching into the night. Then it came, footfalls, heavy, measured, circling the periphery of our small camp. The deliberateness spoke of search, of assessment. Julian's hand found mine in the oppressive dark, a desperate, bone-tight grip. Breathing felt like a betrayal. The steps paused impossibly close, just beyond the thin nylon membrane. Deep, resonant inhalations followed, the sound of a massive creature tasting the air, questing. Our fragile shelter seemed a mockery of protection. Suddenly, a growl resonated, low and guttural, vibrating through the very ground beneath us. It was unlike any animal sound I knew, deeper than bear, more resonant than cougar, imbued with a chilling, calculating quality. Without preamble, the world exploded. Fabric shrieked, poles snapped like dry kindling, and the night air rushed in. Julian and I scrambled from our bags, propelled by pure, unthinking terror, hearts slamming against ribs like trapped birds. In the spectral moonlight filtering through the canopy, I glimpsed it. Colossal, easily 8 feet tall, cloaked in dense, dark fur. Not a bear reared up. The proportions were subtly wrong, disturbingly humanoid. And the eyes, they caught the scant light, gleaming with a cold alien intelligence. Run! The word tore from my throat as I seized Julian's arm, yanking him towards the dense embrace of the trees. We plunged into the undergrowth, branches whipping, thorns tearing, blind panic our only guide. Behind us, the creature followed, its immense tread shaking the earth, a relentless pursuing rhythm. We ran until our lungs burned like acid and our legs turned to water, finally collapsing behind the broad trunk of a fallen giant, sucking desperately at the thin air. What? Elias, what was that? Julian gasped, his voice ragged. I could only shake my head, thoughts fractured, unable to assemble the impossible thing we had witnessed. We huddled there for an eternity measured in heartbeats, starting at every snap of a twig, every sigh of the wind. But the pursuer, the entity, seemed to have abandoned the chase. As the eastern sky began to pale, we crept back towards our violated sanctuary. The scene was one of utter ruin. Our tent lay in pathetic tatters, provisions scattered and trampled. Deep, gouging claw marks scarred the bark of nearby pines. And there, imprinted in the damp earth, were the tracks, enormous, bearing the distinct impression of 5 toes. Unmistakably hominid in basic form, yet impossibly large, impossibly powerful. Julian and I met each other's gaze, the same horrified understanding reflected there. Leave. Get out. Flee this cursed range and never return. The rational mind screamed it. Yet insidious curiosity, that damnable, uniquely human compulsion, began to bloom amidst the fear. We follow them, Julian stated, his voice quiet but firm. Every sensible fiber urged retreat, a desperate scramble back towards the known world. But another part of me, a darker, more reckless impulse I barely recognized, felt the pull, to know, to understand. And so, gathering the meager remnants of our supplies, we turned our faces deeper into the wilderness, following the path stamped out by monstrous feet. The trail led us relentlessly upward through tangled thickets that tore at our clothes and across steep, unforgiving slopes. Whatever made these tracks possessed immense strength, forcing passages through terrain that demanded exhausting detours from us. As we progressed, the very character of the forest seemed to shift. Trees loomed larger, more ancient, their limbs contorted into unnatural geometries. The undergrowth grew dense, spiked with flora I couldn't name, possessing an almost watchful quality. Elias, Julian called out, his voice strained. Look. He pointed towards the trunk of a gnarled behemoth. Etched deep into the bark was an intricate symbol, a complex whirl of lines and angles that seemed to writhe, inducing a strange discomfort in my eyes the longer I stared. What is it? I asked, reaching out tentatively, my fingers tracing the deep grooves. Julian shook his head. No idea, but it's not alone. Look around. He was right. Now attuned, I saw them everywhere, the same disturbing glyphs carved into the oldest, most imposing trees, like markers on an unseen map. We pressed onward, the footprints our unwavering guide deeper into this warped, silent iteration of the wilderness. The air grew heavy, stagnant, and an unnerving quiet settled over everything. No bird song, no insectile hum. It was as though we had stepped through a veil into another realm entirely. Hours bled into one another, exhaustion gnawing at our resolve. We had hiked relentlessly, yet found no sign of our quarry. Just as I was about to voice the need to turn back, to concede defeat to the mystery, we broke through the tree line into a clearing. At its heart stood a tree of impossible scale, a leviathan whose trunk was a dense tapestry of the swirling glyphs, carved layer upon layer. And nestled amongst its colossal gnarled roots was a dark aperture, a cave mouth veiled in shadow. Julian and I exchanged a look, freighted with unspoken questions. The footprints led directly into that Stygian darkness. "'Cause we have to go in," Julian whispered, his voice barely audible above the sudden pounding in my ears. Every instinct shrieked danger, pleaded for retreat, yet I found myself nodding, drawn forward by a curiosity that felt less like a choice and more like a compulsion. Flicking on our headlamps, we stepped across the threshold. The air within was cool, damp, carrying a peculiar musky odor that prickled the senses. Our beams swept across rough-hewn stone walls, revealing more symbols, these rendered in faded pigments rather than carved. Deeper we moved, our footfalls swallowed by the echoing silence. The tunnel twisting, descending further into the earth's embrace. Just as the disorientation threatened to become overwhelming, the passage opened into a vast cavern. Our lights struggled to penetrate the full expanse, but what they illuminated turned my blood to ice. The walls were adorned with crude, powerful paintings, immense, fur-clad figures interacting with much smaller, stick-like human shapes. Some depicted brutal hunts, others suggested arcane rituals. But the true horror lay at the cavern's center, a rough altar constructed of piled stones, stained ominously dark with what I prayed wasn't blood. Arranged meticulously around its base sat human skulls, empty sockets staring into the eternal dark. "We need to leave," I choked out, my hand clamping onto Julian's arm. "Right now." He nodded wordlessly, his face a pale mask in the bouncing light of our lamps. We turned, desperate for the exit, only to find the passage blocked. It stood there, the entity from our ravaged campsite, its colossal form filling the tunnel entrance. In the direct glare of our lights, I saw it clearly for the first time. A grotesque chimera, part man, part beast, draped in thick, matted fur, its face possessing features disturbingly reminiscent of the human, yet fundamentally alien. And its eyes, those eyes held an undeniable, ancient cognizance. It regarded us, a long, unreadable moment stretching between us, then emitted a low, rumbling sound that coalesced, impossibly into speech. "You come," it growled, the syllables rough, approximate, yet terrifyingly clear. Julian and I stared at each other, faces mirroring a maelstrom of terror and vertiginous wonder. We had sought answers, pursued a mystery, and now stood before something utterly beyond the scope of known reality. The creature turned, gesturing with a massive, furred hand for us to follow it deeper into the darkness. And despite every rational neuron screaming flight, I felt my feet move, taking a step forward. In that instant, the realization struck. We teetered on a precipice of a discovery that could shatter the foundations of human understanding. As we trailed the being into the labyrinthine depths, an inescapable feeling settled upon me. We had crossed an invisible boundary, stepped off the map of the world we knew. Whatever awaited us, there could be no turning back. We had blundered into the domain of something ancient, powerful, and utterly unknown, poised to learn secrets hidden since the dawn of humankind. The weekend camping trip felt like a lifetime ago, a forgotten prelude. This was now a journey into the core of an enigma, one destined to challenge everything we believed about existence. And as the profound darkness of the cave system enveloped us, a chilling question echoed in my mind. Were we explorers on the verge of revelation, or simply prey being led deeper into the predator's sanctum? Only the unfolding darkness held the answer, and I feared its revelation might demand a price far exceeding our capacity to pay. Out on the blasted asphalt, where the air itself seemed to liquefy, a form coalesced from the shimmering mirage. My pulse hammered against my ribs. Solitary, stark against the endless road, a figure waited, thumb jerked skyward. We blew past in a rush of displaced air, yet the impression burned itself onto my vision. Exhaustion etched deep, eyes pleading from a sun-scoured face. Beside me, Clara inhaled sharply. "Leo, did you—" Her question hung unfinished. My grip strangled the steering wheel, knuckles pale ridges. Yes, I had seen. And a chilling certainty, cold despite the furnace outside, whispered that this was only the beginning. Miles from now, impossibly, he would be there again. Leo Vance, that's me. What began as a celebration, 5 years with Clara, marked by an ambitious drive from the coastal cool of San Francisco to the staggering void of the Grand Canyon, twisted sideways somewhere in the Nevada emptiness. Hours bled together under a relentless sun, the highway a gray ribbon spooling through ochre desolation, punctuated only by skeletal gas pumps and diners clinging precariously to existence. We'd chased the horizon across states, singing off-key to forgotten anthems, losing ourselves in the comfortable rhythm of the road. But Nevada felt different. The air acquired a palpable weight. The silence pressed in, immense and watchful. Even the radio succumbed, surrendering music and talk for a persistent, crackling void, impervious to my frustrated dial twisting. Perhaps an hour after crossing the state line, he materialized, not walked into view, but simply appeared, a tear in the fabric of the heat haze, a solitary shape beside the scorching tarmac, arm crooked, thumb raised. 70 miles per hour allows only fragments. Sun-darkened skin, clothes that looked slept in for a lifetime, a battered pack slumped nearby. "Maybe we should have stopped," Clara murmured, craning her neck to stare back into our dust trail. I shook my head, the ingrained caution surfacing. "Never, Clara. Not out here. You know that." She acquiesced, though a flicker of worry shadowed her features. He looked so lost, it's brutal. I offered hollow reassurance about other drivers, pushing the car onward. Yet a disquiet settled low in my gut, cold and heavy as river stone. 20 minutes, maybe less. The highway stretched unchanging, a hypnotist's pendulum of white lines. Then ahead again, the same silhouette, identical posture, same tattered attire, the same mute appeal. Logic screamed impossibility. We hadn't stopped, hadn't slowed. Leo. Clara's voice was strained, thin. Is that... No, I forced out, the denial tasting like ash in my mouth, because it was, indisputably. This time, closer, faster, I saw the face beneath the grime. Gaunt was too gentle a word. It was a skull draped in weathered skin, and eyes, behind cheap dark lenses, voids, not reflecting but absorbing the light. Deep, vacant pits. We rode, swallowed by a thick, unnerving silence, the unspoken question hanging between us like a shroud. Rationalizations flickered and died. Heat stroke? A bizarre coincidence? Hollow words against the chilling certainty blooming in my chest. Another 15 minutes dissolved. Then Clara shrieked, a raw sound torn from her throat. He wasn't beside the road this time. He stood planted dead center in our path, an unmoving obstruction on the shimmering asphalt. Instinct took over. Brakes howled, rubber screamed, the car fishtailing violently before shuddering to a halt, inches from the impassive form. My heart felt like a trapped bird battering my ribs. Clara's fingers left crescent moons pressed into the dashboard vinyl. Motionless, he regarded us through those impenetrable lenses. Then, with agonizing slowness, a grimy hand lifted, index finger extending, pointing directly at us. Leo, dear God, Clara whispered, voice trembling. What do we do? Reverse? Flee. Every nerve ending shrieked it, yet a morbid magnetic pull held me fast. A need to comprehend this aberration. Hesitantly, I powered down the window. The desert heat blasted in, thick and suffocating, carrying on its breath an unholy stench. Rot, sun-baked decay. Something ancient and spoiled. What is it you want? My voice sounded fragile, swallowed by the immense silence. His lips parted, cracked and dry. What issued forth wasn't speech, but a sound like grinding interference, radio static tearing itself apart, punctuated by wet clicks and mechanical words that crawled up my spine. And then, nothing. He wasn't there. Not faded, not run. Simply erased from existence between one heartbeat and the next. We stared at each other, faces bloodless, bodies trembling uncontrollably. Did that... Clara couldn't finish. I managed a jerky nod, coherent thought shattered. My mind scrabbled for purchase on the smooth, sheer cliff face of impossibility. Hands unsteady, I nudged the gear selector into drive, easing the car forward. Silence descended again, heavier this time, freighted with the unbelievable. Every heat shimmer became a potential phantom, every roadside shadow a lurking threat. As the sun bled across the western sky, painting the desolate landscape in hues of fire and bruised purple, the neon glow of a roadside diner emerged from the twilight. A haven, perhaps. Without a word exchanged, I turned the wheel, gravel crunching under the tires. We craved refuge, a dose of the mundane, coffee, fluorescent lights, anything to anchor us back to the world we thought we knew. Inside, the air hung thick with the smell of stale coffee and frying grease. A couple of truckers hunched over the counter. An old man occupied a booth by the window, gazing out into the gathering dark. We slid onto cracked vinyl seats. A woman whose name tag read Martha, her face etched with the map of long hours, approached with a weary patience. "Coffee? Something to eat?" she inquired, pen hovering. We ordered pie, coffee, seeking simple comforts. As Martha turned away, the words tumbled out of me, unplanned. "Excuse me, this road, do people ever see things out there?" Martha stopped, half turned, her expression unreadable. "Things?" I struggled for words, feeling foolish. Odd things. Things that shouldn't be possible. A flicker in her eyes, not just concern, but a weary knowing. She scanned the sparse room, then leaned conspiratorially over our table, her voice dropping to a near whisper. It was the traveler, wasn't it? The one thumbing a ride. Clara gasped beside me, a sharp intake of breath. My own skin prickled. You know about him?" Martha gave a slow, somber nod. "Folks say he's always been here. Ghost of someone who perished on this highway, maybe. Still looking for a way out, or," her voice lowered further, "something else entirely." She straightened abruptly, her professional mask snapping back into place. "Just local legends, of course. Desert plays tricks on the eyes. Heat does funny things to the mind." She bustled off towards the coffee machine, leaving her words hanging ominously in the air. The pie sat heavy, tasteless. Martha's words echoed the impossible truth we'd witnessed. "Leo." Clara finally broke the silence, her voice tight with fear. "Let's go back. Forget the canyon. I just want to go home." I reached across the table, my hand covering hers. Her skin was ice cold. "Okay," I agreed. "We'll find a motel nearby, get some sleep, head west at first light." Even as I spoke, a sliver of ice lodged itself in my heart. Would it let us go? As we stood to pay at the counter, I felt eyes on us. The old man in the window booth was watching, his gaze steady and unnervingly perceptive. When we turned towards the door, his voice, dry and raspy like autumn leaves skittering on pavement, snagged us. "Running won't save you." We stopped, turned back. "What did you say?" I asked, dread coiling in my stomach. His pale, watery eyes met mine. "He doesn't want to lift," the old man stated flatly. "He's hunting. Needs someone else to take his place. Someone to walk that stretch so he can finally rest." A profound chill swept through me. How could you know that? A ghost of a smile touched his lips, infinitely sad, infinitely tired. Been running myself 40 years now. He sighed, a sound like dust settling. Since the night I drove right on past him, thinking I was being smart. His gaze drifted back to the window, scanning the immense darkness beyond the glass. You can't escape, he murmured almost to himself. He's always there, waiting until you break or pass the burden on. Clara's hand found my arm, her grip desperate. Leo, please, let's just go. I nodded numbly, steering her towards the exit, the old man's prophecy echoing in the diner's sudden silence. Pass the burden on. Outside, the desert night felt vast and predatory. We scrambled into the car, the engine roaring to life, shattering the stillness. We fled back onto the highway, speedometer needle climbing, chasing the distant promise of dawn. Yet speed offered no comfort, distance no solace. The feeling persisted, a cold pressure at the back of my neck, the sense of being watched, paced. Each glance into the rearview mirror was an act of will, half expecting to find gaunt features reflected in the glass, a skeletal grin illuminated by the dashboard lights, waiting to claim his due. Ahead, the road unspooled into endless blackness, a ribbon tying us to this desolate place. Our anniversary trip had become a flight, and the chilling certainty settled deep in my bones. The journey wasn't over. Out there, somewhere in the consuming dark or shimmering heat, the traveler waited. And sooner or later, inevitably, the road would lead us back to him. That sound, a ripple of mirth slicing through the skeletal silence of Jubilee Gardens, was the precise instant damnation began. A simple patrol, my nightly bread and butter, twisted itself into a knot of cold terror, a memory fused indelibly to the marrow of my bones. Oh, the wisdom I ignored, the primal urge to turn back when the air itself seemed to hold its breath. Silas, that's me. For 3 years, Jubilee Gardens had been my domain, a kingdom of faded plastic and peeling paint where my duties rarely exceeded shooing away curious teens. Easy money. But 6 months post-closure, the place festered differently under the moon. This particular night draped itself heavy and humid, a suffocating velvet cloak. My boots crunched on paths littered with the ghosts of laughter, patrolling past monuments to rust and forgotten joy. Daylight lent the park a melancholic air. Darkness gifted it teeth. Drifting past the skeletal remains of the Grand Carousel, its painted horses frozen mid-gallop, a peripheral tremor snagged my attention. A flicker, swallowed instantly by shadow, at the edge of my torchlight's sweep. I became stone, straining against the symphony of decay, metal sighing, wind whispering through broken lattices. Then, faint as moth wings, a titter, unmistakably juvenile, undeniably wrong, emanating from the shadowed maw of the spook spire. Identify yourself, my voice a clumsy trespasser in the profound quiet. Parks closed, security. Only the echo answered. Prudence screamed for radio contact, for the distant comfort of flashing blue lights. But a treacherous curiosity, the bane of cautious men, nudged me forward. Just kids, I reasoned, chasing cheap thrills. Yet approaching the spook spire, its grotesque, cartoonish gargoyles leering under my wavering beam, the sensation of being observed prickled the back of my neck. Painted eyes, dead yet disconcertingly aware, tracked my hesitant steps. The entrance groaned, a protracted death rattle, as I forced it inward. The air inside hung thick with dust and something else, something stale and predatory. Presence requested, so I tried again, stepping over the threshold into blackness. And there it was, the giggle, no longer distant, but intimate, seeming to curl around the nearby corner. My torch beam sliced through the gloom, anticipating startled teenagers. Instead, it found, rooted at the hallway's terminus, stood a figure instantly recognizable, yet utterly impossible. One of the garish jesters from the Fun Palace Pavilion, miles away on the park's eastern fringe. Its rictus grin shone with hideous phosphorescence in my light. My mind stuttered, rejecting the image. An impossibility. The Fun Palace was derelict, its denizens bolted down. Yet as I stood paralyzed by cognitive dissonance, the painted head swiveled with a sound like grinding teeth. Glassy orbs, devoid of life yet burning with intent, fixed upon me. The painted smile stretched, just defying physics, splitting the artificial face. Then came the laughter, no longer a giggle, but a high, frantic cascade of sound bouncing off the decaying walls, weaving a suffocating net of pure mania. Instinct screamed louder than reason. I fled, heart hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird, scrambling back towards the entrance. My shoulders slammed against the door, immovable, sealed, chained by unseen hands. The cacophony swelled behind me, a chorus of mechanical glee. Whipping around, throat tight with primal fear, I beheld a growing nightmare, shapes detaching themselves from the deeper gloom, more jesters, spectral props, the vacant-eyed simulacra of woodland creatures, all jerking forward in a horrifying parody of animation. Now, not real. This isn't real. The thought hammered uselessly against the undeniable reality. The chill of unyielding wood against my back, the cloying miasma of rot and ozone, the whirring and clicking of internal mechanisms stirring to unholy life. My trembling fingers scrabbled for the radio clipped to my belt. Silas to base, emergency, spook spire, need immediate. Static hissed back, mocking my desperation. They advanced, these automatons of nightmare, their eyes burning with an internal, impossible luminescence in the powerless structure. Patches of synthetic flesh sloughed off, revealing corroded endoskeletons beneath, yet they lurched with a dreadful, syncopated grace. Trapped, frantic, my gaze snagged on a sliver of hope. A grimy window, partially veiled by a tattered velvet drape. Small, high, but potentially salvation. I launched myself towards it, ducking beneath the outstretched, surprisingly strong paw of a grotesque Barnaby bear, its familiar friendly face now a mask of vacant menace. I felt the scrape of cold, metallic digits graze my shoulder blade, fueling my desperate sprint. Reaching the window, I swung my heavy torch. Once, twice, a third impact yielded the satisfying shatter of compromised glass. Ignoring the jagged teeth lining the frame, I clawed and scrambled, forcing my body through the narrow aperture. The world tilted, and I crashed onto the damp earth outside, the air violently expelled from my lungs. For a precious moment I lay there, cheek pressed to the cool, dew-kissed grass, simply breathing. The contrast of physical shock after the suffocating horror within. Pain registered, sharp stings from the glass, blooming aches from the fall. I levered myself upright, trembling. Behind me, the spook spire stood inert, a black cutout against the lesser dark of the night sky. Utter silence emanated from its depths. A phantom, a waking nightmare? The ripped fabric of my shirt, the slick warmth of blood on my hands screamed otherwise. It was real. Whatever abomination resided within, it was horrifyingly real. I staggered towards the distant main gate, legs like waterlogged reeds, every rustle of leaves, every groan of stressed metal, nearby amplifying the certainty that unseen eyes still tracked my retreat. The main gate loomed, a promise of escape, when that sound returned, the high, chilling titter drifting on the breeze. It coiled down from the skeletal heights of the sky wheel, its gondolas rocking rhythmically like spectral cradles. Against all sanity, I looked up. There, silhouetted in the highest car against the bruised indigo sky, sat a lone figure, even diminished by distance, the unmistakable profile, bulbous nose, painted smile stretched into a terrifying crescent. A white-gloved hand lifted in a jerky mechanical wave. That broke me. I didn't walk, I sprinted, raw panic-lending wings to my feet. The car engine roared, tires spitting gravel, as I fishtailed out of the lot. A final glance in the rearview mirror captured the sky wheel's stark outline, and for a heart-stopping second, I swore I saw other shapes stirring in the shadowed gondolas. The precinct lights felt blindingly harsh. My fragmented narrative, punctuated by tremors I couldn't control, was met with patient nods and professionally veiled disbelief. The exchanged glances between the uniforms spoke volumes, drunk, disturbed, or both. "We'll dispatch a unit, Mr. Silas," one offered, the platitude hanging empty in the sterile air. How could I convey the visceral truth? It sounded like madness even to my own ears. Home offered no solace. Every shadow writhed. Every floorboard creaked with menace. Sleep was a forgotten country. The following dawn, I tendered my resignation. No wage could justify returning to that desecrated playground. Weeks bled into a month. The sharp edges of terror dulled, replaced by a gnawing uncertainty. Had stress fractured my perception? A stress-induced fugue? Then the local paper delivered the verdict. Splashed across the front page, Jubilee Gardens poised for grand reopening. Below the optimistic headline, a photograph, beaming investors posed before the refurbished spook spire. And there, almost lost in the shadows of an upper window, peering out from the darkness, a face. White paint, red smile, impossibly wide. It hadn't ended. It had merely paused. Whatever animating malice had stirred within the decaying heart of Jubilee Gardens, whatever ancient current now flowed through those wires and servos, it remained, waiting, watching. And soon, the gates would swing wide, welcoming fresh souls into its playground of horrors. My warnings fell on deaf ears, dismissed as the ravings of the security guard who cracked. So I watched the preparations from afar, a helpless Cassandra, burdened with the knowledge of the darkness poised to embrace the unsuspecting crowds. Because at Jubilee Gardens, the laughter is eternal, and the nightmare has only just begun. Between the stiff pages, 143 and 144 precisely, of my abnormal psychology text, the first missive materialized. Monday's lecture drone, Professor Albright dissecting cognitive distortions, faded to a murmur. Your smile illuminates my entire day. Unfamiliar script slanted across paper, ripped ragged from a canary yellow legal pad. A quick scan of the tiered lecture hall revealed only faces angled toward the front, absorbing theory. Innocuous, perhaps, quaintly charming even. I slipped the paper shard into the cluttered depths of my satchel, consigning it to oblivion. Oblivion lasted until Wednesday, hung over my chair back in the cacophony of the Student Union cafeteria. My jacket yielded the second note, nestled within its lining. Cerulean is undeniably your hue. Wear it more often. A prickle traced my spine. Someone had touched my belongings, unseen. Today I wore olive green. The cerulean mentioned was yesterday's choice. The sensation of unseen eyes sharpened, scanning the crowded tables, the faces blurred by distance and chatter. Then he materialized beside my table, tall, impeccably attired, offering a smile that curved his lips but left his eyes untouched by warmth. "I'm Julian," he announced, sliding into the opposite chair uninvited. "Noticed you around campus. Feels like we might click." Politely, I murmured something about needing to focus on my reading, the textbook open before me. The hint glanced off him. He embarked instead on a curated tour of his own landscape, his passions, his triumphs, his meticulously charted future. As I began gathering my books, stacking them with deliberate finality, his smile tightened almost imperceptibly. "Coffee," he stated, less suggestion than decree. "Sometime soon. There's an excellent spot just off university grounds." Gently, firmly, I demurred, conjuring a phantom boyfriend for protection. For a fleeting instant, his expression clouded over, a storm gathering behind his eyes, before the practiced smile resettled. "Lying doesn't suit you," he murmured, his voice a low confidence. "You're unattached. I've been observing." He rose, smoothing the lapels of his blazer. "Consider the coffee. You'll come around." The notes proliferated thereafter, insidious blooms in unexpected places. Tucked within textbooks, secreted in my gym locker, slipped beneath the wiper blade against my car's windshield. Each message burrowed deeper, revealing an unnerving, granular awareness of my routines, my small daily orbits. I began weaving unpredictability into my days, altering paths to class, seeking out obscure study nooks. Yet Julian remained a constant shadow. He'd occupy a nearby library carrel, materialize at the campus espresso bar, linger outside lecture halls. Always that vacant smile, always the insistent pressure for that coffee date. When I finally articulated a blunt, unequivocal refusal, his composure fractured. "Playing games," he accused, his voice escalating, drawing glances from nearby students who quickly looked away. "It's obvious we're meant to be. Why fight it?" Silence hung heavy. No one stepped closer. The boundary dissolved entirely when he began frequenting the campus bookstore during my shifts. He'd purchase trivial items, a single pen, a pack of gum, ensuring he landed in my checkout line. His low-voiced commentary tracked my schedule, my attire, snippets of conversation overheard with other patrons. My coworker, Chloe, her gaze sharp with concern, started wordlessly swapping registers whenever he appeared, shielding me. She urged me toward campus security, but I hesitated. No explicit threats, just this suffocating, persistent presence. Was it merely awkward courtship gone awry? The tipping point arrived under the stark sodium glare of the near-deserted parking lot after a late-night study session. He stood beside my car, another folded note pinched between his fingers. The air felt thick, heavy. My hands trembled as I pivoted, walking briskly, heart hammering, back toward the library's reassuring lights. The responding security officer surveyed my collected notes, a disturbing chronology laid out on her desk, and her expression conveyed immediate comprehension. She guided me through filing a formal report, painstakingly documenting every encounter, every unwelcome appearance, every shattered boundary. Campus security enacted swift protocols. Escorts materialized after my evening classes. The bookstore manager reconfigured my hours and upgraded the surveillance system. Professors discreetly facilitated seat changes, aiding my efforts to remain unpredictable. The University Women's Center hosted a vital seminar on identifying and combating stalking behaviors. Others emerged from the shadows, sharing parallel experiences. From this, a network coalesced, a tapestry of shared vigilance, safety tactics exchanged, mutual watchfulness. The university administration, spurred to action, overhauled its harassment policies, rendering them sharper, more robust. Emergency call boxes sprouted across the lawns, blue beacons in the night, and a safety app launched, offering a direct line to security with a single tap. Julian received an official warning, followed by a campus restraining order. Its violation, more notes left like poisonous breadcrumbs, triggered sterner measures, mandatory counseling sessions, a restructured academic schedule, ensuring zero intersection with my own. The ordeal reshaped my passage through the world, though not as he'd intended. Fear didn't take root. Instead, a heightened awareness bloomed, a preparedness. I enrolled in self-defense, absorbing not just physical maneuvers, but the psychological architecture of boundary enforcement. Chloe and I co-founded a peer support group, a sanctuary for students navigating the treacherous currents of unwanted pursuit. We armed others with knowledge, recognizing warning signs, meticulously documenting incidents, accessing available resources. The group flourished, a testament to collective strength and solidarity. The campus newspaper published a series exploring personal safety and respect, amplifying student voices, including anonymized accounts like mine. These articles ignited discussions in residence halls, classrooms, student clubs, vital conversations about consent, boundaries, and the imperative of communal support. Just last week, a first-year student sought out our group, visibly shaken by relentless, unwanted attention. Instead of isolation, she discovered a community poised to help her navigate the complexities safely and within her rights. The notes Julian left, once instruments of intimidation, now serve within training materials for resident advisors, illustrating the insidious creep of escalating behavior. What was designed to control through fear has been repurposed into a tool for education, for prevention, because the lesson learned collectively was this: obsessive attention isn't flattery, isn't romance, it's a bid for power. Genuine connection requires no coercion, no manipulation. It blossoms only in the fertile ground of mutual respect, clearly defined boundaries, and the inviolable freedom to say no. Now, traversing the campus pathways, I see the tangible markers of change, the steady blue lights of the call boxes, posters promoting the safety app, the quiet hum of the growing support network. One individual's attempt to dominate through fear has inadvertently catalyzed a community fiercely dedicated to safeguarding everyone's right to move through the worlds untouched by dread. That sound, a blade shearing through the night's fabric, was unlike any terror my ears had ever processed. Not merely its volume, nor its abrupt violence shattering the quiet, but the chilling intimacy of recognition. It was my daughter's cry, ripped from a throat that should have been dreaming peacefully beside me. My name is Elias. What began as sun-dappled family communion with the wild, a pilgrimage to Hemlock Haven Campground, had curdled instantly into the primal fear that haunts every parent's sleep. Clara, my wife, and I had brought our children, Willow, 8 summers old, and little Finn, just 6, for a weekend steeped in mountain air. We'd traced trails, ribboning through ferns, coaxed shimmering fish from the stream, watched marshmallows bloom into golden sweetness over crackling flames. A day etched in perfection until the etching cracked. The scream tore me from sleep's embrace. My hand scrabbled blindly for the torch, heart hammering a frantic rhythm against my ribs, a pulse I could taste in my throat. Its sudden beam found Clara already wrestling with the tent zipper, her face a stark canvas of panic. Willow. My own voice was a ragged thing, scraped raw by sleep and burgeoning dread. Willow, where are you? Silence answered, profound and absolute, the ancient indifference of a forest night. I tumbled out after Clara, stumbling over Finn, who was stirring now, drawn from his dreams by the alarm. Stay put, little man, I managed, forcing a calmness I didn't feel into my tone. We'll be right back. Outside, the campsite lay suspended in the moon's spectral wash, deceptively ordinary. The ember ghosts of our fire, the stout cooler, the children's bicycles leaning companionably against a pine. But Willow's sleeping bag, placed just beyond the tent flap at her insistence, a wish to sleep directly beneath the star-scattered velvet, gaped empty. Clara stood poised at the camp's edge, her torch beam slicing into the dense woods. Willow. Her call fractured, laced with desperation. Willow, please answer. I joined her, my own light carving a nervous path through the darkness. Trees loomed, immense and watchful, their branches weaving intricate dancing shadows on the forest floor. Each rustle of unseen leaves, every sharp snap of a twig underfoot, sent jolts through my system. We have to split up, I heard myself say, a shard of logic piercing the fog of panic. You search that way. I'll go this. Shout if you see anything. Clara nodded, her face a pale oval in the moonlight, before veering left. I plunged right into the wood's waiting maw, calling Willow's name into the absorbent dark. The forest seemed to drink my voice, the blackness pressing close, heavy as earth. Roots snagged my feet, stones threatened my balance, the torch beam jittered wildly as I pushed deeper, stumbling, running. Ghastly scenarios clawed at my mind. Had she wandered, sleepwalking into this labyrinth? Had some predator claimed her? Or something far less natural, far worse? Time dissolved, stretching into an elastic agony. Minutes bled into what felt like hours. My throat burned from shouting, muscles screamed from navigating the treacherous ground. Yet stopping was unthinkable. My daughter was lost in this immensity, alone, terrified. Then, cutting through the oppressive silence, Clara's voice echoed from somewhere ahead. Elias, Elias, quickly. I ran towards the sound, heedless of branches lashing my face. I burst into a small, moon-drenched clearing and found Clara kneeling, clutching something small and familiar. As I drew closer, my breath hitched. It was Willow's treasured possession, a small, hand-carved wooden bird, its paint worn smooth by countless hours in her grasp. She never goes anywhere without this, Clara whispered, her voice trembling uncontrollably. Elias, what is happening? I knelt beside her, taking the little bird. It felt cold, slightly damp from the dew-kissed earth. The implication struck me with the force of a physical blow. Willow hadn't simply strayed, she had been taken. As if summoned by the thought, a twig cracked sharply in the darkness just beyond a clearing's edge. We spun simultaneously, torch beams converging on the tree line. Who's there? I shouted, injecting a bravado I was far from feeling. A breath held in the night. Then, twin points of light reflected our beams, eyes positioned far too high for any common woodland creature. As I watched, frozen between terror and disbelief, more pairs ignited in the gloom, encircling us. Clara's fingers dug into my arm. Elias, she breathed, a ragged whisper. What are those? Before the question could fully form an answer in my mind, one of the figures detached itself from the shadows and stepped into the clearing. The moonlight revealed a silhouette vaguely humanoid, yet its movements defied that shape. Too sinuous, too fluid, fundamentally wrong. Every instinct shrieked, "Run!" but my feet felt rooted to the earth. They had my daughter. I felt it with chilling certainty. Leaving was not an option. Where is my daughter? The question emerged steadier than I expected, a demand cutting through my fear. The creature inclined its head, an unnervingly human gesture performed by something utterly alien. It spoke, its voice a dry susurrus, like wind rustling through autumn leaves, like the groaning of ancient branches. Barely language, yet understandable. The small one, it rasped, is unharmed. for now. A choked sob escaped Clara beside me. I squeezed her hand, anchoring myself to her presence. "What do you want?" I asked. "Why her?" This creature glided closer, its brethren remaining motionless sentinels at the clearing's perimeter. Now I could see it more clearly, skin like gnarled bark, limbs elongated and jointed at impossible angles. Its face, a terrifying topography of knots and whorls, held those luminous eyes deep within shadowed sockets. "We are the sentinels," it intoned. "For millennia, we have kept vigil over these woods, shielded them from the careless hands of your kind. You have forgotten the compacts. You have lost reverence for the wild heart." I swallowed against a dry throat, struggling to comprehend. Part of me screamed denial, attributing this to hallucination born of panic and sleeplessness. But the solid weight of Willow's wooden bird in my hand was undeniable reality. "We meant no disrespect," I offered carefully. "We are only a family seeking quiet. Please just give us back our child." A sound like shifting stones, perhaps laughter, emanated from the creature. "Intent is meaningless dust. The forest demands equilibrium. A life balanced against the lives your people have carelessly extinguished." Ice flooded my veins. They intended to keep her? For what purpose? Sacrifice? The thought was a physical violation. "No," I stated, the word sharp with sudden ferocity. "You cannot have her. Take me." Clara gasped, but I pushed onward, fueled by a desperate resolve. "I am the father. I brought my family here. If a price must be paid, let it be mine." The creature regarded me, its strange head tilted, silent for a long, stretched moment. Then, astonishingly, it nodded its bark-like head. "Your bargain is acknowledged," it rasped. "The small one shall be returned. You will come with us." Relief crashed through me, potent and immediate, chased by a cold wave of fear. I turned to Clara, saw the raw terror and anguish warring in her eyes. "I have to," I whispered, my voice thick. "Take Willow and Finn. Get them away from here. Promise me you won't come back." She shook her head, tears carving paths through the grime on her cheeks. "Elias, no. There must be another way." But the finality in the creature's stance, the ancient weight in the air, told us otherwise. I pulled her close, a fierce, a desperate kiss. "I love you," I breathed against her hair. "Tell the children. Tell them I love them." Before courage could desert me, I turned back to face the sentinel. "I am ready." As if summoned, Willow stumbled from the trees on the far side of the clearing, blinking dazedly, but seemingly whole. Clara rushed to her, enveloping her in a fierce embrace. Willow looked towards me, confused. I allowed myself one final, searing look at my family. Clara met my gaze over Willow's head, a silent testament of love and shattering sorrow. Then the creatures closed in, their strange, arboreal forms pressing near, guiding me away, deeper into the woods. I heard Clara's voice fading behind me, trying to explain to a bewildered Willow that Daddy needed to go away for a little while. My heart felt cleaved in two, yet conviction settled within the ache. I had chosen correctly. The forest enveloped us, the darkness deepening with every step, swallowing the last vestiges of the familiar world. I didn't know what awaited me, what form my payment would take, but with my family safe, I could face it. As we walked, the sentinel who had spoken moved beside me. "Few of your kind embrace such sacrifice," it murmured, its voice the sigh of wind through pines. "Perhaps hope remains." I offered no reply. What words could encompass the terror, the profound physical ache of loss already consuming me, the burning rage at the cosmic unfairness? Silence seemed the only fitting response. I walked onward, leaving behind all I knew, stepping across a threshold into a realm of forgotten pacts and primal forces. The forest had claimed its due, and I had paid. Whatever lay ahead, I would meet it, carrying the knowledge of my children's safety like a shield. As the last echoes of the human world died behind me, a strange thought surfaced. This was not merely an ending, a father's final act. It felt like a beginning, a fragile bridge thrown across the chasm separating two worlds long estranged. Perhaps improbably, there was purpose woven into this fabric of loss. Holding onto that sliver of meaning, I walked deeper into the heart of Hemlock Haven. My existence was a fortress against intrusion, meticulously constructed. My phone yielded only to an arcane sequence known only to me. Correspondence, once absorbed, was rendered into confetti. The glow of my computer screen remained a private spectacle. Such was the architecture of my solitude. Yet this sprawling, sepulchral manor, acquired for its promised isolation, its anticipated hush, offered something else entirely, a pervasive scrutiny emanating from the very walls, unseen yet undeniable. Weeks have passed since my arrival. The structure looms atop its hillock, encircled by wrought iron bleeding rust near the gate hinges. Neglect clung to it like ivy, yet the bones were strong, the rooms beyond easy enumeration. During the hurried departure of the previous occupant, a tide of possessions remained, furniture draped in funereal fabrics and mirrors, an unnerving superfluity of mirrors. Each chamber hosted at least one, often more, looming cheval glasses stoutly framed in wood, wall-mounted ovals chipped with forgotten gilds, sleek modern rectangles devoid of ornament. That inaugural evening found me traversing the echoing foyer into the cavernous main salon. A tall standard lamp sputtered, then conceded a hesitant glow. Above the cold hearth, a mirror waited. Its surface bore fine scratches, hairline fractures in the silvered void, but the reflection gazing back was merely my own. A shrug, a dismissal, the unease attributed to the vast empty spaces, the protesting creak of ancient floorboards beneath my weight, the faint perfume of dust and time, then a sound, delicate, insistent, like a fingernail tracing glass, a brevity of seconds. My gaze swept the room, finding nothing. A branch, perhaps, tapping rhythmically against a distant pane. So I told myself. Morning dawned with a crick knotting my neck, a testament to the vast, lumpy acreage of the bed. Parting the heavy bedroom curtains, I faced the large-looking glass mounted opposite. Sunlight struck its surface, and for an electrifying instant, A presence seemed to coalesce behind my shoulder, not my mirrored twin, but a distinct form, alien to my own contours. I whirled, finding only empty air. My heart hammered a frantic tattoo against my ribs. My palms grew slick. A trick of the light, I insisted inwardly. Descending the grand staircase towards the promise of breakfast, shaking off the residue of the illusion. The remainder of the day dissolved into exploration, a necessary charting of this labyrinth. Corridors branched and twisted, doorways revealing shadowed storage spaces. Each invariably possessed its mirror. Small ones tilted against dusty corners, shrouded specters beneath yellowed sheets, towering rectangles ensconced in Baroque frames carved with floral riots or serpentine swirls. The tally became meaningless, thus lost in the sheer oppressive quantity. Dozens, surely, perhaps hundreds. Unveiling each new glass sent a jolt through my sternum, an anticipation of something leaping forth. Nothing ever did. Yet each encounter with my own reflected gaze deepened the disquiet. Dinner was a solitary affair at a small table commandeered for the kitchen, itself not spared the glassy infestation. A mirror hung above the sink, reflecting cupboards, a sliver of the stove. Lifting a water glass, my eyes met the reflection. Movement flickered there, independent of my own stillness. A figure, subtly displaced to the left, while I remained motionless. My hand spasmed, water sloshing onto the worn countertop. Leaning closer, heart pounding, I found only the mundane tableau of cabinets, and stove returned. Normalcy asserted itself on the surface, though my pulse refused to quiet. I mopped the spill, electing for deliberate ignorance. Night pressed down, sleep evaded me, so I lay staring at the plaster medallion on the ceiling, the bedside lamp casting a lonely circle of light against the encroaching gloom. The house settled around me with intimate creaks, punctuated by soft, indeterminate thuds. At one point, a distinct brushing sound whispered against the bedroom door panels. Breath held shallow, I remained utterly still. Eventually, resolve hardening, I rose and pulled the door open. The hallway stretched away, dimly lit by a single, weak fixture at its far end. Directly opposite my door stood another mirror, tall and severe within its carved wooden frame. Cautiously, I stepped out, bare feet testing the groaning boards. My reflection emerged from the dimness, the open bedroom door yawning behind it in the glass. A tightness constricted my chest. Then, a whisper, softer than breath, words indistinguishable, disturbingly close to my ear. I spun, finding emptiness. Turning back to the mirror, my reflection stared back, unchanged yet. A flicker. In the silvered depths, a shadow seemed to glide along the corridor behind my reflected form, a presence utterly absent in the physical space. The following days became a campaign against reflection. I marshaled old sheets, towels, flattened cardboard boxes, attempting to blind the myriad eyes of the house. Futile efforts, coverings slipped inexplicably, nails refused purchase bending under the hammer. Tape lost its adhesion. It felt less like inanimate resistance and more like a quiet, persistent rejection. More mirrors surfaced in improbable locations. Behind a closet door, tucked into a shadowed alcove beneath the stairs. Each discovery was an internal concussion. The sensation of being watched intensified. A constant prickle on my nape, regardless of my solitude. One afternoon, a heavy thud resonated from a storage room down the second floor corridor. Pushing open the door, I found a large, rectangular mirror lying prone on the dusty floorboards, face up. It hadn't been there yesterday. I distinctly recalled propping it against the far wall. Its surface seemed subtly warped, the glass imperfect, ancient. Crouching, I studied my distorted features, rippling across it, and then, behind my wavering image, something moved within the glass, a rapid transit from one edge to the other, too swift for detail but unmistakably humanoid in shape. A numbness crept into my fingers. I scrambled upright, whirling around. The room held only a derelict chair, stacked boxes filmed with grime, an old chest of drawers. My heart battered my ribs as I fought for steady breaths. I had to move it. Grasping the heavy frame, I strained, dragging it into the hallway. It felt unnaturally dense. Propping it against the wall outside the storage room felt like a compromise born of dread, unwilling to leave it, yet loath to carry it further. As I stepped back, a soft, grating sound arose, the mirror tilting slowly, deliberately, settling at an oblique angle, reflecting a skewed slice of the corridor. I left it there, a knot tightening in my stomach, resolving vaguely to haul it to the basement later. That evening, seeking refuge in the main salon, I tried the television. Reception dissolved into a blizzard of static, its frantic hiss grating on already frayed nerves. I silenced it. The mirror above the fireplace reclaimed my attention. The house murmured its usual complaints, settling timbers, pops from the aging plaster. I switched on another lamp, hoping to dilute the shadows. Perched on the edge of the sofa, my gaze oscillated between my phone's small screen and the large, watchful glass. Then I saw it, a nebulous shape hovering on the mirror's surface, positioned precisely where the empty hallway entrance lay behind me. My muscles locked. A sheen of cold sweat broke across my brow. Rising, I approached the fireplace, compelled to confront the reflection. My face stared back, pale, my hair escaping its knot. Behind my mirrored self, the doorway to the hall remained vacant, yet the glass hinted at a subliminal flicker near the edge of its frame. I recoiled, averting my eyes. The oppressive weight of the house, the ceaseless possibility of unseen company, pressed down. Fleetingly, I entertained notions of secret passages, hidden occupants, but found no corroborating evidence. No forced locks, no inexplicable footprints. Only the mirrors and their increasingly aberrant reflections. My nights frayed into restless vigils, punctuated by abrupt awakenings in cold sweat, phantom noises dissolving upon investigation. After a week besieged, I tried a new tactic. A local shop yielded bolts of blackout fabric. I cut panels, armed myself with hammer and nails. Driving the first nail beside a large bedroom mirror, I felt it, a peculiar vibration thrumming through the glass, not the expected jarring impact, but a subtle, resonant tremor within the frame itself. Methodically, I worked, covering the largest, most prominent surfaces. A fragile sense of relief settled as the reflections vanished. Perhaps I dared to hope this could be managed. Morning shattered the illusion. 2 lengths of blackout curtain lay crumpled on the floor, ripped from their moorings. The nails remained embedded in the wall, but bent grotesquely, as if wrenched downwards by considerable force. Rage warred with a chilling confusion. I hadn't heard a thing. The doors remained securely locked, windows intact. No ingress, no explanation. Yet the fabric lay violated. Grimly, I set about recovering them. Pressing the thick cloth against the cool glass, an icy draft inexplicably kissed the back of my neck, though every window was sealed tight. I hammered the nails deeper this time, arms aching, sweat stinging my temples, half expecting a hand to emerge from the silvered depths. Nothing overt occurred. I finished, moving to the next defiant surface. Midday found me slumped on the bottom stair in the foyer, catching my breath, rubbing a sore shoulder. My gaze fell upon the large oval mirror near the front door. I had smothered it beneath a heavy woolen blanket. The blanket was gone. It lay heaped in a far corner. I froze, the futility washing over me in a cold wave. My heart began its frantic drumming. Something in this house desired the mirrors uncovered. A prickling climbed my scalp. Wiping my damp face on my sleeve, I retrieved the blanket, forcing myself to drape it once more over the offending glass. This time, I anchored the edges with thick strips of duct tape, smoothing them down with fierce determination. I waited, braced for the sound of tearing fabric. The sight of the blanket flung aside. Silence held. Then, from the upper floor, a faint metallic clinking drifted down. It was subtle, yet distinct enough to halt my breath. I ascended the stairs, each step measured, silent. Reaching the landing, the sound ceased. The hallway stretched before me, submerged in the weak luminescence of the single overhead bulb. The mirror I'd dragged from the storage room remained canted against the wall. Approaching it warily, my reflection swam into view, elongated, distorted, as if viewed through moving water. Nausea churned. Leaning closer, my reflected face seemed subtly wrong, features twisted into an unfamiliar mask. Then, movement registered in the glass behind me. I lurched back, spinning around. The corridor remained utterly empty. Frustration mingled with stark fear, my breathing shallow and rapid. I began to pace, eyes darting towards each closed door. Another sound, a dull scrape, like something heavy dragged across floorboards. Turning the corner into an intersecting passage, I saw it. A mirror I hadn't noticed before, perched on a small, spindle-legged stand. It commanded the junction, reflecting both hallways. It was uncovered. Dust lay thick upon its frame, but the center of the glass bore a single, distinct handprint. I stared, transfixed. It wasn't my hand. Larger, the fingers spaced oddly. My pulse throbbed in my ears. I scrubbed at it with my sleeve, but the greasy smudge persisted, seemingly impressed upon the glass from the other side. My gaze swept the left corridor, then the right. Nothing. I retreated, desperate to escape my own reflection, legs suddenly unsteady. A chill traced its way down my spine, despite the sweat filming my skin. The hallway felt charged, hostile. I hurried back towards the sanctuary of the staircase, unable to resist glancing over my shoulder, perpetually expecting a pursuing shape, a flicker at the edge of vision. Downstairs, I snatched my jacket and stumbled onto the porch, gulping the cold, damp air. The sky lowered, gray and oppressive. Wind sighed through the skeletal branches of the surrounding trees. My thoughts raced. Hire someone? Remove them all? Smash them? A deeper fear recoiled from that last notion, a premonition of unleashing something worse. and the thought of inviting anyone into this place felt like a betrayal of my own guarded nature, but more acutely, a potentially dangerous imposition. As daylight began to bleed from the sky, the inevitability of return settled. The house was mine. Abandonment felt like surrender. Back inside, I forced myself on a grim patrol, checking the mirror coverings. Some held fast. Others had slipped, sagged, or bore fresh signs of tampering. My nerves were raw filaments. Each mirror pulsed with a latent energy and animosity I couldn't comprehend. My attempts to suppress them seemed only to provoke whatever resided within. Night has fallen completely. Exhaustion weighs me down like stones. I've locked myself within the master bedroom, a single lamp my tenuous bulwark against the dark. I sit now, perched on the edge of the bed, scribbling those words onto a notepad. Soft, furtive scraping sounds echo from the hallway beyond the door. My eyes keep darting to the large mirror across the room. I shrouded it meticulously earlier today with a thick, dark sheet. Now I can see the bottom corners beginning to curl upwards, slowly, inexorably, as if something behind the fabric is patiently tugging it free. My hands tremble as I write. My mouth is desert dry. I swallow repeatedly against the tightness in my throat. What inhabits these countless reflections? Why this house? I possess no answers, only the suffocating certainty of being trapped, observed. With every blink, I conjure phantom figures standing just behind me, waiting for a lapse, a moment of weakness. All that remains is to cling to the fraying edges of my sanity, hoping for revelation, for escape, for some way to endure. For now, there is only the listening, the waiting, the creaks in the oppressive dark, and the sickening uncertainty of whether the face in the glass is truly mine anymore. A sudden fracture in the woodland quiet, brittle, sharp, shattered the calm. My hand stalled midair, a half-toasted confection suspended above the fire's hypnotic dance. Around me, the woods, sun-dappled and welcoming hours ago, now gathered their skirts of twilight, transforming into something vast and brooding. Silence pressed in, save for the fire's eager consumption of timber. I became pure attention, listening. And then, distinct above the fire song, footfalls, measured, heavy, not the scuttling gait of some night creature, purposeful. A cold tendril of dread coiled in my gut. This sanctuary, this chosen isolation, far from the city's clamor, suddenly felt less like a refuge and more like a trap. The immensity of my aloneness became a palpable weight. With deliberate slowness, I lowered the skewer. My fingers closed around the cool metal cylinder of the torch. Its beam sliced into the deepening indigo, painting the tangled underbrush at the clearing's edge in stark relief. Phantoms writhed in the interplay of light and leaf. Was that a flicker of movement, a suggestion of form swallowed by the bulk of an ancient sentinel oak? Who's there? The question emerged thin, a thread of sound easily lost. It snagged on the tremor in my throat. Only the sighing exhalation of the breeze through the canopy replied. I rose, limbs feeling like ill-fitting prosthetics. Perhaps the quiet was breeding phantoms in my mind, solitude playing tricks. But no, there again, a definite shift, a swift passage just beyond the torch's fading reach. a silhouette threading itself between trunks, hugging the gloom. My pulse hammered against my ribs, a frantic drumbeat. Primal instinct screamed, "Run!" Water hissed violently as I upended my bottle onto the flames, plunging the immediate world into profound blackness, save for the torch's nervous eye. Blindly, frantically, I snatched my pack, stuffing essentials, hydration flask, nuts, map, with clumsy haste. The footsteps quickened, louder now, shedding all pretense of stealth. Discovery was mutual. They were advancing. Leaving everything else, I bolted into the arboreal maze. The torch beam pinballed ahead, a chaotic guide. Unseen branches lashed my skin, roots clawed at my ankles. Sheer terror fueled my piston legs, driving me deeper into the trackless wild. Eternity compressed into minutes before exhaustion forced a halt. Air tore at my lungs. Leaning against rough bark, the world swimming, I fought for bearings. Panic had been my compass, directionless flight my only plan. The truth struck with physical force. Adrift. Utterly lost. My fingers scrabbled inside the pack, map, compass, absent, sacrificed to haste. The phone offered only a mocking reflection on its dead screen, signal bars non-existent, battery bleeding away. Close by, the sharp snap of desiccated wood. A choked cry died in my throat, still behind me. How in this Stygian gloom could they possibly shadow my panicked flight so precisely? Noise discipline abandoned, I surged forward again. Pursuit felt inevitable, clairvoyant. Lungs afire, muscles screaming protest. I ran. Then abruptly, solidity vanished. The earth simply fell away. I plunged down a precipitous slope, a chaotic tumble through leaf litter and scratching brambles. Landing hard at the base, knocked the breath from my body in a painful whoosh. Stars wheeled behind my eyes. As consciousness swam back, a new sound registered. The careful, deliberate descent of boots crunching on the incline above, coming down. Adrenaline surged past the pain. I lurched upright, my ankle protesting sharply, and hobbled onward. The trees unexpectedly receded, unveiling a small clearing crowned by a breathtaking sweep of diamond dust stars scattered across velvet black. A vista for awe, rendered terrifying by circumstance. My torch sputtered, its beam faltering, turning sickly yellow. A frantic shake proved futile. The light gave a final, pathetic sigh and expired, plunging me into a profound, starlit dimness. Wood groaned at the clearing's perimeter. I pivoted, eyes aching to pierce the gloom. A form materialized, darker than the surrounding dark, a man-shaped void against the trees. What is it you want? The words were torn from me, ragged with panic and spent energy. The silhouette advanced a pace. Your attention, a low voice resonated, surprisingly calm. I retreated, palms thrust outward defensively. Don't come closer, I'm armed. A useless, desperate lie. The man, unmistakably male now, halted. No, he countered, the word strangely soft. You're not. You abandoned your defenses back there. Along with this, he raised an object, Starlight-kissed metal, my own sheath knife. A cold void opened in my stomach. He'd been there, rummaged through my sanctuary. How long had unseen eyes been observing me? Who are you? I fought to keep the quaver from my voice. Why this chase? He closed the distance slightly, tall, wide across the shoulders, clad in night-hued garments. A shadowed cap and beard obscured his features. Who I am matters less than why you are here, Elara. The world tilted. My name, spoken in this wilderness by this stranger. How? The unspoken question hung heavy in the air. How could I know? He echoed my silent shock. I know more than just your name, Elara. I know about the flight, about what or who you fled. Thoughts scrambled. Sark, a detective? Sent by Marcus? The stranger seemed to perceive the frantic calculation, a slight shake of his obscured head. Your former husband has no part in this. Marcus isn't my employer. A pause hung in the cool air. I'm here because you need help. Help? A brittle laugh escaped me, sharp-edged with hysteria. You offer help by hunting me through this forest like prey. The fire before us spit and hissed, its hungry flames consuming the dry pine, casting flickering effigies upon the laughing faces of my children. Around us, the mountain air was sharp and crystalline. Our first night, sequestered in this remote haven, and a fragile sense of perfection settled over us. If only the veil hadn't been so thin, hiding the maelstrom poised to engulf our idyllic family escape, a shadow that would stretch long into the years ahead. I am Eleanor, 38 years weathered, a mother of 2 transplanted from the suburban sprawl of Chicago. My husband, Julian, and I had sculpted this journey over months, yearning to sever the tethers of our frenetic lives, to simply speak with our daughter, Clara, 12, and our son, Leo, 9. The cabin, discovered through the ether of the internet, promised rustic solitude, a timbered refuge embedded deep within the Canadian wilds, leagues from any semblance of town. Those initial days unfolded like a dream spun from sunlight and pine needles, halcyon moments spent tracing forest paths, coaxing fish from the glacial lake nearby, and charting constellations in the vast, unpolluted night. The children, liberated from the tyranny of glowing screens, rediscovered wonder. Julian and I found ourselves again, adrift from the incessant chime of obligation. Then, on the third evening, as marshmallows browned over the embers, a dissonance intruded. From the dense woods encircling us, a sound, footfalls, deliberate and weighty, not the furtive scurry of forest creatures. Julian rose, his silhouette stark against the firelight, peering into the encroaching gloom. Hello? His voice absorbed by the immense quiet. Anyone out there? Silence answered, stitched only with the familiar nocturnal murmurs of the wilderness. We convinced ourselves it was merely the wind or imagination painting shadows where none existed, a dismissal I now recognize as the first tremor before the quake. Later, cocooned in the cabin's quiet dark, sleep claimed us all, until a violent crash ripped through the stillness, jolting me from slumber. Before thought could form, our bedroom door splintered inward. 3 figures erupted into the room, faces obscured by ski masks, weapons glinting menacingly in the faint moonlight filtering through the window. Nobody moves. The command cracked like ice. Stay silent. Nobody gets hurt. My heart became a frantic drum against my ribs. Julian moved instinctively, a shield, but rough hands hauled him from the bed. The kids, another voice rasped, harsh and demanding. Where are they? Please. The word tore from my throat, trembling. They're only children. Please don't harm them. The apparent leader, a tall silhouette whose piercing blue eyes were unnervingly visible through the mask's slits, gave a curt nod. His companions vanished, returning moments later with Clara and Leo clutched in their grasp. My babies, petrified, tears tracing paths down their pale faces. Mommy, Leo whimpered, a sound that fractured my soul. I yearned to gather them close, to whisper assurances I didn't possess. We were herded into the main room, forced onto the worn couch. The leader stalked before us, his firearm a constant, unwavering threat. Listen carefully, he declared, his tone unnervingly calm, almost detached. We require sanctuary, a place to disappear for a time. You'll accommodate us, comply, and survival remains a possibility. Julian, ever the guardian, found his voice. Take anything, valuables, the car, just let my family leave. A chuckle escaped the leader, devoid of mirth, chillingly hollow. It's not quite that straightforward, my friend. We're all companions on this particular journey now. Through the ensuing hours, fragmented truths emerged. They were fugitives, fresh from a significant heist in the nearest city. Our secluded cabin, miles from prying eyes, was their perfect temporary burrow. Movement within the cabin was permitted, but under constant predatory vigilance. One of them, younger, introduced as Finn, carried an air of reluctant participation, a flicker of apology in his guarded movements. The other, Marcus, was pure aggression, his weapon quick to rise at the slightest perceived infraction. Yet it was the leader, Silas, who radiated the deepest chill. A calculating glacial reserve resided in those blue eyes, broadcasting a capacity for ruthlessness should expediency demand it. Days bled into one another, each dawn bringing a renewed, suffocating tension. We existed in a strained pantomime, striving to soothe the children's terror while meticulously avoiding any action that might provoke our captors. Julian and I communicated through fleeting glances, unspoken strategies forming and dissolving in the face of their omnipresence and our confiscated phones. Hope felt like a distant star. On the 5th day, I observed Finn's growing preoccupation, his gaze repeatedly drawn to the windows, scanning the tree line. Seizing a moment when Silas and Marcus stepped outside to survey the perimeter, I risked it. "Finn," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "You have to help us. This is wrong. You know it is." He met my gaze, the conflict churning visibly within him. I can't. They'd kill me." "They might kill us regardless," I pressed, desperation lending strength to my words. "Please, if not for us, do it for Clara and Leo." Before a response could form, Silas and Marcus re-entered, their presence instantly reasserting control. But I'd seen it. A fissure in Finn's resolve. A seed of dissent, however fragile, had found purchase. That night, under the cloak of supposed sleep, Finn materialized beside me in the shadowed kitchen. "The rear door," he breathed, the words barely disturbing the air. "Unlocked. After midnight. You didn't hear it from me." My pulse surged. A chance. Perilous. Fraught with catastrophic risk if discovered, yet undeniably a chance. I roused Julian, conveying the desperate plan through gestures and hushed fragments. Then, gently waking Clara and Leo, impressing upon them the absolute necessity of silence. Movement became agonizingly slow, each protesting floorboard a thunderclap in a tomb-like quiet. We reached the threshold, freedom a tangible presence just beyond the wood. Then, a voice sliced through the hope. "Going somewhere?" Silas stood silhouetted in the hallway, gun leveled. My spirit plummeted, so agonizingly close. But the tableau shifted. Unexpectedly, Finn stepped from the shadows behind Silas, his own weapon now raised. "Let them go, Silas. It's finished." A standoff crackled with lethal energy. Silas, assessing the situation, Marcus still asleep, Finn's sudden betrayal, slowly, reluctantly lowered his firearm. "You're making a grave error, Finn," he snarled, venom dripping from the words. "The only error was believing in you," Finn retorted, his voice unsteady but resolute. He flicked his gaze towards us. "Go. Now. I'll keep them occupied." We needed no further urging. We burst through the unlocked door, plunging into the biting embrace of the night woods. Behind us, shouts erupted, the muffled sounds of a fracas. But looking back was a luxury we couldn't afford. We ran, lungs searing, muscles screaming, until sheer exhaustion forced us into a small, moon-dappled clearing. Catching our breath, the reality washed over us, alive, free, but terrifyingly adrift. Lost in an unforgiving wilderness, miles from anywhere, stripped of supplies, the path forward utterly unknown. Julian assumed command. "We keep moving, north. They might follow." Driven by adrenaline and primal fear, we pushed onward, navigating by the cold light of distant stars. The children stumbled, exhausted, but propelled by the same terror that fueled us. As dawn painted the eastern sky in bruised hues, the most beautiful music reached our ears, the distant thrum of engines. We surged forward, breaking through the final barrier of trees onto the blessed asphalt of a highway. Flagging down a passing transport truck felt surreal. The driver, Gus, his face etched with kindness and concern, listened aghast to our ragged story. His cell phone became our lifeline to the police, his truck our chariot to the nearest town. The days that followed dissolved into a haze of official statements, medical evaluations, and choked, tearful reassurances to frantic family back home. We learned Finn had indeed subdued Silas and Marcus, holding them until authorities swarmed the cabin. His testimony, corroborating ours, sealed their fate, long years behind bars. Journeying homeward at last, the ordeal settled upon me, not just as memory, but as a profound alteration of self. The terror was a palpable thing, leaving invisible scars that would require time and tenderness to fade. Yet interwoven with the fear was an overwhelming gratitude for Finn's unexpected courage, for the astonishing mettle of my family, for the simple, unasked-for kindness of strangers like Gus. Above all, I marveled at the strength we'd unearthed within ourselves. Confronted by unimaginable dread, we had endured, resisted, and ultimately prevailed. Our family bond, already deeply rooted, had been tempered in the crucible of shared trauma, emerging adamantine. The cabin in the woods, intended as a sanctuary, became the stage for our lives' most harrowing chapter. But observing Julian, Clara, and Leo, weary yet whole and undeniably together, I understood. Whatever future storms might gather, we possessed the fortitude to weather them. We had faced the abyss and walked away. Our peaceful retreat had twisted into a nightmare. Yet in surviving its depths, we discovered the true, unyielding measure of our strength.